I don't want to take up any time because I'm a bit of an imposter here. This is not my webinar at all, and I don't want to get in the way of Claire and Gillian interviewing Rod. So just very, very quickly, you may know me. My name is Rick Adams. I'm the CEO at Practical CSM, and we, if you like, sponsor this series. And I just wanted to come in to say thank you so much to Claire and Jade Randalaje, who's not here right now, and Gillian. The three of them have been putting so much effort into running these, and not just turning up and doing it, but actually making sure behind the scenes that they run smoothly and getting it all organized and ready. And we're so proud of what they've done. They've made this a really fantastic series. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end, and their work commitments and other things mean that they need to take a break from this, which is perfectly understandable. So I just wanted to say, because this is the last one we're going to do for this sort of season, we're going to take a break over the summer vacation, and we'll reconvene, once we've got other people on board and ready to go, and we'll let everybody know when that is. But this will be the last one for a little while, and really, I just wanted to say a personal and a practical CSM. Thank you very much, Claire, Gillian, Jade, you're not here, but thank you also for all the hard work you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. No, absolute pleasure. And with that said, I'm going to get out of everybody's way and let you get on with your interview with Rod. And Rod, I'm looking forward to this very much. I should be listening and taking notes.
Excellent. Thanks, Rick.
No problem.
Wonderful. Well, so thank you for that, Rick. And as Rick said, we want to let Rod get into the session pretty quick here, but I'll just introduce myself as Gillian Taylor, and I will be one of the moderators today, essentially. So if throughout anybody has any questions that they want to contribute, I'll be looking at the chat as well as Claire. And I think at this point, I'll pass it to Claire, and then Claire will pass it to Rod.
Yes, thanks, Gillian. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very exciting session. We are very excited to have Rod, who prepared some presentation and topics for discussion. If you do have your book, Rod's book here on your hand, please don't hesitate to take it and just ask your question that you may have from the topics that we will address, or other ones as well, because this is also the opportunity to bring some things that once you read the book to Rod here. Again, this is going to be, the format is a discussion, so don't hesitate to even raise your hand, use the chat, and we want to make it as interactive as possible. Thank you again, Rod, for being here, and I'll pass the mic to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And just checking in with Gillian and Claire, it looks like the participants are not able to speak. So maybe what I'll do is have you read through the chat, and then can pull in questions, and then I'll ask you some questions as part of the discussion. But anyway, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about a topic that's sort of near and dear to my heart, which is how people can use their discussions with their managers to help them develop themselves, help them to grow in their careers. I've been just like you. I've been a frontline manager. I've been a director and a VP, and ultimately a chief customer officer at a number of enterprise SaaS companies. And then recently wrote a book called The Chief Customer Officer, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is sort of a book that outlines strategies that evolving leaders can be thinking about and developing through the course of their career to help them get to that next step. It's and then for those of us in customer-facing roles. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a story, right? Like Gillian and Claire, how many of us have siblings, right? And maybe there's a little bit of rivalry between you and your siblings. So this happens to be my younger brother, not that much younger. His name is Mike. I live in California, in Northern California, and he had come out to visit. And I wanted to show my brother Mike that I still had it, right? That we could go out and we had some fun. So we went out to Lake Tahoe and did some hiking and walking and stuff. And one of the things that we did was we rented one of these boats, has a driver, and we got in one of these inner tubes behind it. And it seemed like it would be such a great idea to have this boat go really fast, and it's bouncing on top of the water, and we're screaming. It looks like a ton of fun. Well, at the end of this, I ended up getting really dizzy and getting vertigo. I don't know if you've had vertigo before, but it's where you lose your balance. And I've had this a couple times in my life, so I should have known. And it put me out for about 2 weeks where I couldn't kind of get out of bed. You can see with the name on it says Airhead. It should have been an indication that something bad was going to happen. But the reason that I'm telling you this is because a lot of us over the last 3, 6, 9 months have felt a little bit out of balance in our careers, whether it's through changes that are happening at your company, changes in your role, things that are happening in the economic environment that get you a little bit, uncertain. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is how to create more of that certainty by having really thoughtful discussions with your manager about the skills that are important for you to develop in your roles, how you're doing about them, so that your manager can be on the lookout for giving you opportunities to demonstrate and grow. Because it's increasingly challenging. If you feel like, okay, what's your goal for those that many of you that might be in customer success functions, what are your development skills and goals for the next year? If your only goal is, increase net retention rate or increase gross retention rate, you're certainly going to do as much as you can to grow that, but some of that's out of your control. Like a lot of companies, customers are churning more. And if you measure your development and growth just on that metric, then you might be missing out on skills that you can be developing along the way, whether you're getting the results that your team planned for, that you hope for or not. We're going to talk about a couple of those skills that are outlined in the book and how you can be developing those throughout the year in your career. So one of the exciting things for me is for many of you that may aspire to be, a customer-facing executive. Maybe some of you are already customer-facing executive. Maybe some of you are moving along your career. Is that being a chief customer officer is increasingly popular. According to LinkedIn, it's the 7th fastest growing C-level title. Now, there arguably are a lot of C-level titles, like they claim over 50. Everybody wants to be a C-level. But one of the challenges that I also see is that it's still a relatively new function, and we have an opportunity to find it, which was one of the reasons that I thought it was helpful to write the book, where there's only about 4,000 chief customer officers in the world compared to other functions that have been around much longer and it's much more established, like the CMO roles or the chief financial officer roles. Does this surprise anybody? Right. So this is kind of where we're going. And so because this is an evolving role, I ended up, I have worked at companies including Intuit and RingCentral, Marketo. Most recently, I was at Gainsight. And like most of my career has been running some or all of these post-sale functions. About 2 years ago, I started a consulting business and it gave me a chance to work with dozens of companies and talk to hundreds of people. And there was a big need for, hey, what is this role? If I'm a CEO, what should I expect from this leader? Now, whether they have a C-level title or they're a VP or folks that are evolving in their careers at senior manager, director levels, like what should I expect? And what are the skills that you should be developing along the way? So I interviewed dozens of people and put together some stories into a framework of how you can develop in this. And what we're going to talk about is you should be listening through the discussion. Like these are some examples of strategies and stories that you can apply to your own work, thinking about, what is your own action plan among these capabilities. Each of the chapters of the book is one of these 8 different strategies and skills to develop, with lots of things that you can be doing all along the way. And so I want you thinking about what is your action plan? I'll give you a task at the end. Are you having that discussion with your manager on a regular basis so that they can be listening out for you? And all of this is really helpful because the economy proves your career, right? Your career should not be dependent on economic factors that affect, whether your company's retention rate hit its plan that it developed, 2 Augusts ago. You want to be able to say, hey, here are the goals, here are the skills I developed, and feel good about that and be tracking them. Right? I put this together into what I call the Chief Customer Officer Maturity Model. And there are basically 8 strategies and skills that I've developed through my work and my experience. And you can then sort of measure yourself, if you like, on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of these 8 areas. Theoretically, then have a discussion with your manager about, well, what do each of these skills mean, and where are you, right? And this isn't about trying to be an 8 or a 10 in all of them. It's just a little bit of self-awareness of what are the things that are important for your role, and then what are some of the skills that you'd like to get better at. So let me ask the group. So I'll kind of go through these really quick, and then I'll ask the group. So customer connections is about building out strong relationships with your customers. Do you understand their needs? Are you building relationships with key executives there? Are you creating those listening paths? Thought leadership is an opportunity for you to be able to communicate at whatever level of the organization. It could be providing thought leadership to your team. It could be to your peers at a company. It could be to your customers. It could be to other people on LinkedIn that are in your peer community. Change management during scaling is, how are you able to support your organization's growth when it is actually growing? Are you able to plan ahead and balance out, the time that you're spending on your short-term priorities while you're also making sure that you're putting in place what you need to be able to support company growth in the future? Strategic thinking is how you're contributing to both your business and your company's impact over the long term, understanding your markets, your competitive environment, and contributing to that growth. The next one is a little bit of a tougher one. Actually, when I started writing the book, it was 7 strategies. And then when the market started to turn, I'm like, you know what? It's actually a really important skill to develop of how do you handle and think through times when maybe your business is contracting or you don't have the resources you need. How do you keep those initiatives going where there is this uncertainty? Optimizing metrics that matter is about, what are the metrics? What are the outcomes that you're trying to deliver? And are you able to consistently and repeatedly deliver against them? Cross-functional relationships is, how well are you building out your skills, working with peers, being able to drive things that you don't necessarily control all of the resources. So you have to influence your peers. You have to solicit resources from your company or your CFO to get things done. And then communicating and storytelling is a really great skill having now written a book and being an author, becoming much more aware of the power of telling stories that people can remember and how you communicate information that makes a difference, which might be different than I show charts and I show slides, particularly in customer facing roles. How do you bring those customer experiences to life? So maybe you can put in your chat some examples, what are 1 or 2, what is one area that you think you're particularly strong at? And maybe Jillian and Claire, you can monitor and see if there are any trends.
Absolutely. And I will note, if anyone actually wants to speak, I can allow that. There is a function. So yes.
Awesome.
Either way, though, if you'd prefer to type something in the chat, I can read it out loud.
So what are you seeing there? And Jillian, when you look at this, what's an area that you think you're particularly strong in? Claire, I'm coming to you next because I'm going to ask for an area of development or, that you'd like to get better at.
Yeah. It's interesting because what I was thinking of, I'm curious of the others that are participating today, what sort of customers they have, because I think that for me, and also size of organization. So if I think of myself in my current role, I might feel like I have different strengths than I have had in other CS roles, just because of what I get to what is required of me more often. So I think right now, the one that pops out for me is optimizing metrics that matter, because it's actually a challenge for us right now. So I feel like that's an area to grow, not just myself, but as a company, it's really important right now. And then I think the communicating and storytelling pops up in many different ways. And whether it's internally to make a business case, and that kind of crosses over the cross-functional relationships, or if it's like working with doing customer stories with the marketing team too. I feel that one may be a strength because I like doing it, but also I'm pretty hard on myself. I feel like I can develop in every area.
Yeah, excellent. And then Claire, how about you? What's one of the areas that you would think of as sort of a strength of yours, and why?
I love all the categories, and it's very good exercise, I think. And I don't know if all the participants would feel the same, but the customer connection is probably one of the reasons we started in the CS community, like to connect with the customers. I would say more now in my current role and over the years, one thing that really stands out is the cross-functional relationships. So really building this, it's not just CS on one hand and the rest of the company on the other, and the strategic thinking. But the one that is really for me, one that I would like to work on is the last one you added to your model, which is the maximize opportunities during economic uncertainty, because it's very current and it's something that's so out of our control kind of type of points. So I think this is a very interesting one.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and just being self-aware of areas so that when you are talking with your manager and say, hey, I'm a really good storyteller, but sometimes your manager might get asked to present it in all hands, and you would be like, oh, I'd love to do that because I'd like to practice my speaking skills, or practice, I'm good at storytelling, want to practice more. And they might go, oh God, that's such a pain, I'm really busy. And if you've had that discussion with them and say, hey, when opportunities like this come up, think of me, right? Or when there's opportunities to strategic thinking to get you involved in an offsite planning or your annual fiscal year strategic planning things, just having that discussion is really helpful. So at the end of our talk in a couple minutes, I'm going to share a template that I use with my clients that the audience will be able to download and can sort of use as a discussion guide in addition to the this kind of model here. And so lots of folks have found this helpful to fill this out for themselves. I'll show you kind of like how to fill in the dots. But anyway, you get the picture there. So what I'd like to do over the next couple of minutes.
Before we move on, we've got some engagement here from
lots
from
of it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So Chris, he says that, or actually Chris feels that they're strong with customer connections. So as a salesperson in the past for many years, developed the skills necessary to build strong connections. So that's interesting too, because we didn't all start in customer success from the start. So we bring different skills from past experience as well. That's a great one. And Jade as well, cross-functional relationships and strategic thinking. And Rick, it's a great model. Rod, do you recommend doing this as a solo exercise, or do you see benefit in perhaps asking one or two trusted friends or colleagues for their perspectives as well?
Yeah, I do think that it's helpful to do yourself. And then I'd recommend that you do it with your manager, because what you can start to see is, okay, on the scale of like 1 to 10, where would you rate yourself? Or where do you think you are? And then you could ask your manager and see if you're sort of aligned. And if hopefully you're working closely and they know you pretty well, that it'll generally align. But it also gives an idea of if you think you're doing really well in something and your manager doesn't, or if your manager thinks you're doing great but you're maybe more critical of yourself, that you can figure out why and then talk through, okay, how do we get aligned, or what are some opportunities that they can be aware of to help you develop areas that you think you'd like to get better at. So I do think it can be useful both ways.
And Jennifer, thanks for participating. So Jennifer's on my team. So strength, optimize metrics that matter. Yeah, I'm not surprised you said that. Strategic thinking as well. Improvements in the areas of customer connections, cross-functional relationships. And would anybody put your hand up if you do want to say anything out loud as well? But yeah, thank you. And okay, and another one, Ednor, as I start a leadership role at a new company, thought leadership and building cross-functional relationships are the areas that they believe will generate value for their team. Yeah, I can relate to that too. I think it's when you're new as well, you're actually, there's different opportunities where you're looking for ways to contribute and to show your value early on too. So things like this getting involved.
Yeah. One of the stories that I talk about in my book about the cross-functional relationships is as you get more senior in your career, you find that your peers become your team. A lot of the mindset of people that are frontline managers is when they say like, okay, who's your team? Who are you trying to sort of optimize for and advocate for? It often feels like the people that report to you. But as you become more senior, your primary team becomes your set of peers and your executives. Sometimes that means that you sub-optimize for what might be best for your organization because it's the right thing to do for the company. So keep that in mind as you're kind of listening for some of the stories we're going to talk about. So what I'd like to do next is go through 3 different examples of strategies that are, different topics in the book to just give you examples of things that you can be thinking about and, sort of developing in your career. And they're not the only ones. There's lots of examples of what you can be doing throughout the book. But one of them is around your ability to build skills around creating and sharing thought leadership. And this does not mean that you need to write a book or you need to come up with a blog. It can start as simple as you have a point of view and you share it and you get feedback. Sometimes that point of view can be with your staff meeting, right? Or with, your direct reports. You just have maybe something that's worked for you and you share that. And then, it can become something that you share at increasingly larger venues, right? To your all hands meeting. It might be in front of customers, but this is a really important skill for customer facing leaders to go through. And again, it doesn't require writing a book, although I did write a book, but it can start as simple, years ago, when I started my consulting business, I would post something and get, whatever a popular one might be, 24 likes. And I didn't always rate myself on the likes, but I would have a point of view about what it was. And it wasn't really critical how many people followed it or whatever. And it would get some number of impressions. But then you feel more confident and you build up your capabilities in sharing that. And then later on, when I did come out with the book, this was when I got my first author copies, there were 1,000 likes and 400 comments with lots and lots of impressions. The concept here is just have a point of view and find different ways to share it. Another opportunity that you can take is participating in podcasts or discussions just like this, right? At some point, you're a participant. But maybe through the participation, you get involved in the discussion and you ask questions and you engage with the moderator. Then this was a client of mine, Monica, who worked at Building Engines. And she raised her hand to say, hey, I'd really love to speak on a podcast. There's tons of them out there if you'd like to do it. They're not like, Salesforce conference with tens of thousands of people. They can be very low risk ways of just sharing your experience. And that was kind of what Monica was doing. She was sharing her experience as a customer success leader. In this case, it was the Women in CS podcast, perhaps something that was important for her. And, it's just a really nice opportunity to get practice building out your skills with different audiences. You can also do this by finding ways to present to your organization or finding places that you might be able to go and speak publicly, for example, in meetups. So there's, depending on where you live, now different organizations are starting to have in-person groups. Maybe there's a speaker or a panel. You can volunteer to help organize it or to participate in a panel or to lead a topic. Again, as you're building out your career, these help you with different skills, not just sharing your thought leadership where people can look to you as a mentor or role model or somebody that has tried a best practice, but it's also really good to just practice your public speaking skills in, in at first, relatively low risk types of ways. Maybe you're comfortable speaking in front of 10 people first, and then maybe 25. I can tell you, even as recently as like couple of years ago, like public speaking wasn't my favorite thing because I didn't do a ton of it. And then as I started more in my consulting and writing and coming out with a book, you become much more comfortable because you're sort of practicing it. So I'd love to ask if people over the past year or maybe a goal for yourself, what do you think you could do to develop this skill around, thought leadership within your group? Have you done something in the past year that's an example, or maybe a goal that you'd like to set for yourself over the next year? Claire, I'll start with you while hopefully people put some things in chat. What have you done? And this is actually a really good example, just you guys hosting this, creating opportunities for thought leadership. But is there something else maybe that comes up that you've done in the past year?
Not necessarily that I've done consistently, but this is maybe part of the organization that I'm with, about like just providing more visibility about CS within the organization. I think your example was a good one, but this is something that we've built for a few years now, and just like providing more details and just in basic information about what exactly do we do in the organization that has been growing very fast for the last few years. So I think this is the main one, but like you said, there is this leap that we need to take in terms of, okay, I'm putting myself out there and just trying to not necessarily be scared of, what the rest of the community. And I think this is very something that we were discussing just before about how the CS community can be also just like very welcoming and just providing those feedback that we just have to ask. We just have to get out there. And I think this is going to be the next challenge.
Yeah. It's one of the things that's great about the customer success community is it's not something that's been around for decades. So there's not proven, methodologies. This is the only way to do it. Where those of us that are developing and trying new things, like there's a lot of talk right now in the industry about, sort of digital touch or automating processes or creating more self-service. We're all figuring this out together. So you might be doing something that's working, share it with others, right? There's no right or wrong. And the community is very, kind of open to hearing other ideas. There's also this point about it doesn't need to be like perfect. When I worked at Intuit, our CEO, Steve Bennett, shared with us this mindset of having a teachable point of view. It wasn't a law or it was a rule. It was just your point of view that you were sharing with others. And, then you could get feedback and decide, is it something you want to continue? But it sort of lowered the stakes of this has to be super thought out. You're sharing your point of view. Jillian, can you think of something that you've done or recently or that you want to do in the next couple of months around sharing an idea or example of thought leadership?
Yeah, for sure. Well, during the pandemic, that's when I really made a goal where I was actually job searching as well at the time. So that really forced me at looking at ways to grow myself while I wasn't actually in a role. And I got involved. That's actually how I met Claire and Jade and started doing this initiative and interviewing others about their books and doing it with a live audience. That really kind of leveled up in terms of what I had done previously. And then when I joined the company that I'm at now, one of the things I did to get in front of, in a remote environment, to get in front of the company, was I took what I knew about all of our customers and did a presentation to the rest of the company who they're a little more behind the scenes engineering, and then gave them a sort of a lens to, these are who our customers are, and this is some fun facts about what make them unique and that kind of thing. So so those are a couple of things that I would answer to that question. And we have a couple of people in the audience too.
Please, what they say.
So Chris Simpson, he did a podcast with Mike Horn, author of Integrity by Design, and a session on connecting virtually during the pandemic for future of SaaS, and hoping to find more opportunities to network through these types of opportunities going forward.
Fabulous. Outstanding.
Yeah. And, when I read that, I was thinking that's one thing I have not done, is participated in a podcast where you don't have to have your camera on. Like, I feel like this is the ultimate, where you've got your camera on and you're talking. But podcasts are great because you can just listen to them wherever you are. And so I think those are great. There's a lot out there. So actually, we should all look for that podcast, Chris.
Jillian,
actually, Chris, maybe let us know what the podcast is in the chat so we can check it out if you want. Go ahead, Rod. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, the example you brought up a minute ago about you presenting your understanding and what the organization had learned about customers to your company is an awesome example that probably just about anybody on this call could do with their organization, because sometimes we get so close to it, we think things are obvious, but they're not. Everybody's heads down. Your engineering team is super heads down. Your marketing team is heads down doing their things. And if you create a way to help them understand what's happening with, like, company names and specifics of what they do and outcomes and people's names, it's really helpful. And that comes into the storytelling piece, which I'll get to in just a minute. But so the thinking about ways, again, going back to have this discussion with your manager so that they can be listening out for opportunities to help you develop these skills that you'd like to develop. So the next topic, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
There are a couple more.
Okay.
I think it's just a good way to circle back to it, because Chris did the podcast. Jade was a judge for a CXCS award that really permitted her to see other companies, like what they're doing and when they share some thought leadership. But just to go back to Chris, maybe, like, if you want to do some more, Rick is also offering, like a very good platform for new speakers, for just the community to talk to each other and kind of create those connections. So Rick put his email address in the chat. So I invite everyone who is interested to be a bit more out there in just increase or improve their thought leadership to reach out to Rick. It will be a good person to do that. But like you said, Rod, sometimes it doesn't have to be that public or have this big audience, and everybody can just start within their own organization and it will already be very impactful.
Yeah, that part of it is just building up the confidence that each of us have, that what you've learned and what you have to share is useful to others. And again, it doesn't need to be like a big new theory. Just remember, there are people in your organization that might be new to your industry, or new to being in customer success in some way, or new to being a manager, and your experience can be very valuable to them or to a group of people with those similar needs. And I'd really encourage you to just think about it that way of, how do you have your set of your points of view that you can share. So now that you've got your points of view, it's really important how you communicate that and how you ideally can turn this into stories. There's some data out in the world about what people remember, and people tend to remember stories and examples far better than they remember bullets and data on charts. But be conscious of this. On my website, I have a list of books that I think are good resources for learning how to do storytelling and communicating more effectively in a business environment. But I'd like to give a couple of examples, again, that are just things to keep in mind for how to get your message across. So one of the sort of funnest things that I did a couple of years ago was I had an opportunity at our annual sales kickoff when I worked at Marketo, and we were trying to have basically our whole company understand our customer journey. And we could have gotten up on stage. I could have gotten up on stage and had some slides and said, oh, we have a sales handoff, and then we do the implementation, and then they call for support, and then we work with our CSM. But that wasn't going to be super memorable. So we got dressed up, and it was a little bit of a combination of Willy Wonka, because the company was sort of purple, yellow brick road, which happens to be us. I'm not sure that the analogy really worked, but it was actually really funny. And we pulled in people from across the company, some sort of, the celebrity salesperson or the celebrity, people that wanted to be on stage. And we did a skit that talked about the customer journey. And people loved it. It was so much more memorable about like a sales handoff, right? So there was the salesperson that everybody recognized in some type of costume that would then come on stage, and we would have a handoff, right? So it communicates that sales handoff, and then we had a customer, and then we had somebody dressed like a competitor that got booed off the stage. But anyway, the point is that we made it sort of fun and memorable in finding a different way to get information across. And you don't always need to do skits, but the point here is, how do you tell your information and communicate it in a way that can be effective? When I was writing the book, one of the people that I talked to was Star Hofer, who's this chief customer officer at a company called PartnerStack. And she felt like her skills at being able to tell stories, particularly about customers and their customer experiences, and to be able to share that, like you were mentioning a minute ago, in your all hands, helped her organization understand what the customer experience was. How do you relate what an engineer does or what a marketer does to how customers actually experience that, right? From visits to customers, from talking with them. And this was one of her superpowers that she talked about. And so she volunteered and wanted to speak at every all hands about something that was going on in her customer facing organizations and being able to tell those stories. And it also gives an opportunity to recognize various teams' contribution to it. And the other point that she mentioned was to make sure that you're talking at the right level of detail. If you're talking to your CEO at their staff, what level of sort of storytelling is important? Then if you're talking at your own staff meeting with people who are very much into the day-to-day, what's the right level of communication and storytelling as well? So that becomes a skill that you can develop, being able to talk at the right sort of altitude for your audience, if that makes sense. And then lastly, think about your communication style when you have your various internal meetings, whether, again, you're talking with your staff meeting, whether you have an opportunity to present at peer organizations. Maybe you get to go to your sales all hands and present at a sales all hands. That was something that I really liked to do. It demonstrated that we were involved, we were listening, but also, again, creating an opportunity to share what our joint teams were doing that contributed to those customer outcomes. And then for those of you that might have opportunities to present at your CEO staff or at a board meeting, again, being able to think about the right audience. So I'll ask you, again, put in the chat, what's an opportunity that you've had recently to tell stories? And, do you have maybe a particular story that you like to tell? So Claire, what's an example of a customer story that you like to refer to?
This is a good one. I think, and maybe this is the part of we all like a comeback story, you know, like how there is this point with the customer who's kind of everybody's all hands on deck to save this person with this client who didn't happen to have a good experience with the product or with the overall company, and just having, you know, like the all the different teams, whether it's going to be obviously in the SaaS environment, product, the sales team, CS, engineering, sometime to really just like has a unified front, just like find the right solution and get, you know, like this type of common sense to, okay, it's not just about who's doing what and who's to blame in terms of why we get there, but just finding the right solution together and show that it has an impact. Because I had a few examples like this for clients. They were just, once you align internally, it does shows to the client, and therefore, like, you know, it's it can just change the situation, and obviously, you know, like for the revenue of the company, can be having a positive outcome out of this. But right. It kind of goes back to what you know, like one of your model is about, like the cross-functional relationship, you know, how important I feel in my experience, and having those client experiences of when we do work together internally, eventually the client is going to win.
Excellent. What was the company's name? And what was the name of the person that you worked with?
You mean the client?
The client's name. Yeah.
But I do have a few examples, so I wouldn't be able to give you like the exact name right now. And also, but it was at different levels. It happened with the SMB, so very small companies, as well as enterprise. So the type of client, eventually they do like to have this sense of there is a whole team behind us.
Great. Well, you'll see in the book, one of the skills around this is by having it be memorable, so you can put yourself in that person's place. I'm a big fan of, like, so your story was, oh, it's a turnaround story. We all love turnaround stories. And everyone walk by is like, oh yeah, there's a story around turnaround. But they won't remember anything about what you said. But if you said, hey, we were working with whatever it was, we were working with Marketo, and it was this guy named John at Marketo, and the problem they were having was this one. And then Jillian on my team worked with John at Marketo, and they solved this problem in this way. Like, telling the stories, they'll remember, oh, I know what Marketo does. You like it'll click a little bit more. So I'm a really big fan of, you know, using people's names, make it colorful. Like, I don't know, you'll remember my story. What happened to Rod? Oh, he was in where, you know, he was out traveling and felt sick. You're like, no, he was on a lake, or at least maybe you don't remember it was Lake Tahoe, but you remember Blue. Who was he there with? His brother. What happened? It was like, oh, he got dizzy from bumping on the thing. Like, there are different ways of telling stories that are perhaps a little bit more memorable. And I'd encourage you to, you know, think about that for folks in the audience. When you tell those stories, like, pick a company, pick a person, it just as a representative, and it doesn't need to be the only one. You're like, hey, we do this all the time. We turn around customers all the time. Let me give you a specific example of one. And then they assume that you're doing it for all those other ones. Yeah.
That was great to see your slide about Star introduced with the customer stories at every all hands. So our leader of all of customer experience here at ANGO has introduced that. And so I did the first one and recorded an interview with one of our customers who actually uses our product every day. And it was awesome. The response we got from the rest of the company was phenomenal. So Jennifer is here. Maybe Jennifer's interested in doing our next interview for the next all hands in a few weeks. But yeah, it's very impactful because it's actually someone who is using this product that our engineers and our product team, they work so hard on, and I think it goes a long way. And just hearing the impact, we're in the healthcare space, so that's such an important and filling shifts, and we know that's an issue right now, and across North America anyways, is shortage of healthcare staff in hospitals. And that's the problem that we're solving. And we're just bringing some of our customers, it's just a matter of bringing them into the world of technology, period, from very manual processes. So it's when the bottom line is improved patient care, it adds that element of that emotional element to it. To be honest, it means a lot. So yeah, and we have some in the chat here too. Rick says one comparison that he tells all the time to his clients is that purchasing online study training is just like purchasing a gym membership. So it's not the membership purchase that makes you fit. It's that you have to go down to the gym regularly and lift the weights. So there's a story here, and find that clients really get this much more than the example of just saying you should get training for your team, and it's the study that the self-study works. So analogies is part of storytelling. Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways to communicate. And so on my website, there's a list of books that I recommend to help just find different ways to share information in different formats. Storytelling is clearly one of them. And then when you have public opportunities to share information, that can be a good way to make it relatable and memorable. And in different types of groups, when you may be sharing data, how to make data useful, and sharing not just the data itself, but what the insights. So the point is that communication and storytelling is a skill that can be developed, whether you're an individual contributor, whether you're a manager, whether you're a chief customer officer, and there's a different set of expectations of your ability to do those things as you progress in your career. So the next topic I wanted to talk about is demonstrating strategic thinking. And there's lots and lots of ways to do that. I'm going to talk about a specific one today around segmentation. This is particularly relevant as many of us are thinking about how do we best allocate resources within our team, where maybe you can't hire as many people as you'd like, or you're not getting help from other organizations because they have their own priorities. But again, in the book, there's lots of different examples of how you can be developing your strategic thinking skills from thinking about your own team's priorities over the course of a quarter, getting involved in your quarterly or annual fiscal planning process, adjusting to changes in the environment with something that a competitor is doing or something that's happening, in the world, like maybe right now, ChatGPT and AI is something that you may want to think about. It's basically, how are you building out your skills around it? So the segmentation concept can be important, because when you have a fixed pool of resources, you have to think about how you best allocate your resources to optimize your outcomes. And one of the ways that one can do that is by dividing your customers up into different segments, and then figuring out, which segments are most important for you, and maybe how do you differentiate your experiences based on the needs of those different customer segments. And so this concept of, this is a little bit of a play on creating different needs based on, or creating different experiences based on needs of different groups of customers. You see, like the little kids have something that's age appropriate for them, and the older kids have something that's age appropriate for them. You might be thinking about your own customer base of, maybe we have certain customers in, maybe there's a segmentation based on size of the company. Maybe there are regional differences. Maybe there are industry verticals. But the point is that you're trying to understand what's unique, and are there ways that you can sort of organize yourself to deliver the right experiences for those right groups of customers.
So just a time check for you, Rod. There's just under 10 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. So one of the tools that I use with my teams, and again, this is downloadable. I have a website at rodcherkas.com. You can find resources that you can download. I have a bunch of templates, but one of those is just a format for thinking about the experiences and how you organize sometimes your customer success teams or your post-sale experiences. So this just is a nice way to lay it out. It enables you to communicate, and just talking through it with your team and your managers enables you to say, yeah, here's how we're going to handle, let's say, our strategic customers, and here's maybe how you handle your smaller or mid-size types of customers. And so you can find these. And as you think about your own strategy, you want to make sure that the work that you and your team are doing are aligned to your company objectives. Often, particularly now, you want to make sure that you're focused on your highest value customers if you do have to sort of rationalize your scarce resources. As companies grow, they tend to create specialization, and your customers also need different things. So this concept of creating differentiated experiences and then making sure that you're allocating your resources appropriately. So I'm going to just quickly go through the metrics that matter, but there's also, this is going to be highly dependent on your business, and it's kind of difficult to lay out all the things. There's more stuff in the book, but the point here is that you understand the financials that are important for you and your organization to deliver against, and that you're putting together initiatives that help you achieve those. And then importantly, that you're creating visibility to the work that you're doing to help achieve those outcomes. And so in this section, there's this concept of understanding your unit costs, building out relationships with your CFO or your finance business partner to understand what are the different costs to deliver your experiences on a per customer basis or on a per segment basis, and that you can then sort of look through this for your own business to say, hey, is this a customer segment that is worth investing resources? So an example is when I worked at Marketo, we were trying to understand the profitability of our SMB segment, which had lots and lots of customers, but it turned out relatively low ARR, relatively high churn rates. And then when we did the math to understand what the cost was to deliver, we found that it wasn't super profitable. So we did two things. One was see what we could do to help improve the profitability by segment. And then it also enabled us to focus resources on the higher end enterprise clients that were much more profitable. And so a lot of people don't necessarily take that mindset of doing the math, talking with their finance teams about what they can be doing. And, particularly these days where companies are more focused on profitability than just top line revenue growth, you want to make sure that you're matching the cost to deliver with the revenue that you are delivering against. So again, there's a model that you can download on my website. So over the last 2 or 3 minutes, there's this concept I want to go back to of, where are you on this maturity model? So you can rate yourself on sort of a scale of 1 to 10. And then you can also identify where you want to be, right? Over the next 3 months or over the next year, where would you like to develop more? And then importantly, being able to talk to your manager about it. So again, if you go to my website at rodcherkas.com, there's a link to sets of resources. And one of those resources is this goal setting template that you can use. And you can use this just to, for sort of self-awareness, but I'd also recommend that you use this and discuss it with your manager. On the left, it has all of the different skills that are part of the CCO maturity model, regardless of where you're at in your career. You can talk about your strengths and your gaps, and then defining what your action plan is. And if you're sort of on the cusp of getting promoted, maybe talk to your manager about what are the skills that they would expect from you to be developing to demonstrate that you are ready for promotion to the next level or to an expanded scope. So, the directions for you is to go back, think about this and prioritize your areas for development. What are the particular steps that you can be taking to grow those skills? How do you connect the dots between the skills that you're developing and the outcomes that you'd like? And then be able to think about and talk with your manager of what does success look like? What does good look like in these different capabilities? So anyway, I just want to thank everybody. We'll take a couple of minutes for any additional comments in the chat. You can either just go to rodcherkas.com/resources or click on this little QR code. Feel free, if you don't have the book, order it on Amazon. It's offered at a discount right now, so you can do that. And the Kindle is super inexpensive if you like to read that way. And please feel free to follow up with me at rod@hellocco.com if you'd like to talk more about any of these areas, or if there's something I can help you in your career with, or work with you and your company to help you improve your post-sale business results.
And
So,
nice work by Claire there. Yes, thank you, Rod. And nice work, Claire, there, for adding the link to the discounted price on the book, on Rod's book. So grab that. It's also in some of where I was posting about this on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, Rod, this has been incredibly valuable. I will say probably of all these that I've been involved with, I feel that probably everyone's come away with something really tangible and useful. So really appreciate you doing this for everyone. Let's see, where are we? So there's only 1 minute. So I think I'll just pass it to Claire to do any final remarks there, and then Rod, if you have any as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, as Rick was mentioning at the beginning of the session, we're going to take a break. And this is an amazing session to, finish the year and go on into our summer break. So thanks, and all the effort, and the work that you put into this presentation and make it interactive and accessible for everyone. And I think Chris Simpson on the chat also was mentioning, how he highly recommend your book, because this is definitely a must read for whatever level you add in your CS career, and just a good exercise on self-reflecting and exactly determining what we want to do. So thanks again, Rod. This has been fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to stick around with the two of you for just a minute, but it's really nice. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and please download these resources or feel free to reach out to me. You can also, if you don't already, follow me on LinkedIn. Just make that connection. I'd love to hear from you there.
Perfect.
Amazing.
And you,
yes, I should say thanks to Practical CSM for hosting this event as well. And Gerald's included a couple of links there for future events coming up as well. So
thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.